Welcome to One on One. I'm Phil Tillman, your host, and in our continuing effort to introduce voters to candidates on the Eastern Shore, in the Lower Eastern Shore, we're delighted to welcome Chris Robinson into our studio. Chris, nice to see you again.
Well, thank you very much, Phil. It's great to be here.
Now, you are a candidate for the Maryland Senate from District 37, I think. Is
That's
that right?
correct.
Well, describe where 37 is and how it impacts Wicomico County.
Okay. Well, District 37 includes all of Talbot County, all of Dorchester County, and a little more than half of Wicomico County. Significant parts of Salisbury, and it goes down to Eden, Allen, where I actually went to a parade back in July. They had a great Allen Day parade.
Oh, the Allen 4th of July parade.
It was a great parade. I met a lot of people I knew. I was surprised that some of my friends lived there.
Yeah.
It was a great place. I thought, God, this is one of the greatest places. I'd love to live in a place like this. So,
that's Pollitt.
Exactly.
Rick Pollitt. His family's been there for decades.
I was shaking hands with Pollitts all the way to the church.
Yeah,
so,
it's like Talsey's in Chrisfield,
Yeah.
Anyway,
the last part of the trip. I think the Pollitts do live on the street near the church, and
yeah, they do.
Yeah, that means they're getting to heaven faster than some of us.
Perhaps.
Faster than some of us. But it also includes two towns in Caroline, Preston and Federalsburg. So it's
my old stomping ground, because that's where I grew up, in Federalsburg.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that explains why everybody asks you to use that sign site in Federalsburg. So, okay. Well, it's a beautiful area, and it's filled with farming. Talbot County is a huge farming county. Dorchester is a great waterman, and Talbot County is big for watermen. Tillman Island, and same with Dorchester. The watermen, the watermen 30 years ago, 40 years ago really, was one awesome trade. Now it's kind of dwindled, but the watermen are a very significant factor in both Talbot and Wicomico and Dorchester counties. And Caroline is hugely farming, more so than Talbot or Dorchester. Yeah. And Talbot's a very wealthy county. It's got one of the nicest little towns in America, Easton. And so then you come down the road a bit and you get to Cambridge, which is a place that's really starting to revive itself. It has gone through, like a lot of towns in America, a decline, but it's starting to find its feet again. And I really want to be a part of that. I've practiced law in Cambridge for 19 years, and I've watched it go up and down, up and down. And right now it looks like it's on a steady course, steady trajectory upward. But there's always a chance that something will fall through, and someone has to be there to keep it going. And same with Salisbury. Salisbury is one of the great cities on the Eastern Shore, and really on the whole Atlantic coast, I think. It's got everything that a great city could want. It just has to find its name, I think, or what it is. It's got the best universities. It has the great Salisbury University, but it's got this awesome community college and a president who is just first class. President Ray Hoy. Yeah. That guy knows what it means to make things happen. I mean, you go to that campus and you think, this is beautiful. This is where you can really get an education. And my impression of Salisbury has always been, it is filled with ambitious people, smart people, and giving people. And I base that on lots of discussions I've had with people. Ray Hoy is one of them. And my work as a lawyer, and my work for Congressman Roy Dyson. Back in the 80s, for 10 years I worked for Congressman Roy Dyson right here. And I worked with Marty Neat, the great president of First Federal Shore Savings.
Yeah.
He's made a great name for himself. And I think he was like one of the top 25 business people in the state of Maryland a few years ago. And I'm happy to be a good friend.
And he came here like you did because of Roy Dyson.
Exactly. Yeah. And and we worked for the congressman for 10 years. Well, I think he worked for 6 years or 7 years, but I went on to work for 10 years.
Yeah.
And fell in love with the Eastern Shore. Just fell in love with it. And
where are you from originally, Chris?
I'm from a town called Kensington, just north of Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah, sure.
It's a small town.
Yeah.
I never thought I would leave. When I first bought my first house, it was a mile from where I grew up. And then when my wife and I we didn't get married at this point, but we bought a house together. It was a 3/4 of a mile from that. I never thought I would leave Kensington. But worked for the congressman for 10 years and fell in love, and I don't want to be biased, but I fell in love with Dorchester. And so when Mr. Dyson lost the race, fortunately my father had come to me in midstream, say 5 years, as I'd worked for Mr. Dyson for 5 years, and my father came over and asked me to go out with him for lunch one day in Washington, and I said, sure, Dad. And he said, you know, Chris, you really got to get a trade. He said, you know, what happens if Roy loses? My father really liked Roy. He said, what happens if Roy loses? And I said, you know, Dad, I did take the law test a few years ago. Maybe I should take it again. And so I did. And so when Mr. Dyson lost, I was able to go right to law school and get a trade like my father said. And I'm glad I did, because I'm able to get up and go to work pretty much anywhere in the state of Maryland.
Yeah.
But I started a law office in Cambridge. Well, I actually got a job in Cambridge working for an old law firm, 100 years old, Harrington and Nab.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went out on my own. Not very far. I just went across the hall, started my own law office, and I've been doing that for 13 years.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot. You know, I make payroll every week. Been doing that year in, year out. It's taught me a lot about what it means to be a small businessman.
Yeah.
And what small business people deal with. And really, that's the backbone of the Eastern Shore.
Yeah.
You know, people who are entrepreneurs, innovative, limber imaginations, ambitious. They can turn on a dime when things go sideways. They have to figure out how to make ends meet. And that's really been one of the great lessons that I've learned in all my life, is running a business. You know, I really, but back onto the district, it is those 4 counties, and it's a great mixture of people who I find to be very kind. You know, when I campaign, people don't say, are you for this or are you for that? They say, Chris, you sound like a nice guy. Don't forget where you came from. Just do a good job.
Yeah.
And you know, they're just middle of the road. You know, you hear a lot of people talking about, you know, the extreme positions on the right and the left, and I tell you, I just don't see that in my campaigning. Every once in a while, someone will want to bend your ear for a long time, and you know, my dad told me one great thing when I was about 24 years old. Chris, you need to learn to listen, and so I enjoy listening to find out, really, do you really have something to say? And people do. People, by and large, have something interesting to tell you if you listen long enough. Ultimately, though.
Your district, I'm just sitting here thinking, with the watermen and the declining revenue from the Chesapeake Bay, primarily because of pollution of the bay, I would say, because there's certainly the oyster population, the crab population decreased. And then you go right into Caroline County and other parts of Talbot County. When you come away from St. Michael's and the areas in Dorchester County that are on the water, and there are farms, is there a natural problem can you be an environmentalist and also be pro-farming as a senator from that district? That's what I'm trying to get at.
I think that's the best question, because really, I drive down the road thinking about these kinds of things all the time. And I think the greatest challenge we have is creating jobs, economic development, and balancing that with a clean, healthy environment. And the Chesapeake Bay is the crown jewel of the Eastern Shore, and all the tributaries that feed into it. And I think that is one of the reasons I am so excited about the possibility of being elected senator, because I think that what would be very helpful is to have someone who will make it their ambition to bring the parties together, so we can find an agreement in principle on how we make progress in cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay. Because I totally agree with you. A lot of people have tried to figure out why has the crab population diminished and the oyster population diminished. And there are lots of reasons. Overharvesting, MSX has hurt the oyster population significantly. But really, pollution in the bay. It's not a healthy place like it used to be. And we need to someday let Mother Nature kind of go back to recreating the bay somewhat like it used to be. And I think that there's no reason that those two important goals can't coexist: a healthy environment and a robust agriculture industry. And actually, the farmers have made huge contributions already toward that goal, but more needs to be made.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people say, and I've been asked many times, do you believe that the poultry industry is being unfairly targeted in the effort to clean up the bay? And I have to say, I don't think so, because every different segment of society and every community, not only in Maryland, but up in Pennsylvania and the other states that are part of the Chesapeake Bay Pact region, they're all having to contribute. And if they don't contribute, then we will not be successful. And I think when the EPA was sued for not making sure that the states were doing their part, that's when we started getting these regulations that people are concerned about. And they say, you know, the EPA really shouldn't be the legislators. That's a legislative job, not an agency job. They weren't elected to pass these, what they call laws, but they're regulations. Well, that's what happens when you go to court. You get a court order and you have to abide by a court order. And I think it in some ways it does lack I think the essential democratic pedigree, especially the phosphorus management tool. It has to be something that everybody can agree to. Now, not everybody. When I say everybody, I mean most people, because some people will never agree with anything. But you have to do. You know, there was a great political philosopher years ago, John Stuart Mill, and I thought a lot about. I studied political philosophy in college, and I thought a lot about what he ultimately said, and that was, the best government is the government that provides the greatest good to the greatest number. Really, you get the best good for the greatest number. You can't do everything. We can't be perfect. We can't satisfy every person, every problem. There will always be people who are going to be slouchers, for example, and you can't change that. You can't change human nature. But I think that we have to get agreement and principle on how we go forward. And sometimes people talk about balance, and balance is critical. Balancing the environmental goals with agriculture, because agriculture is our #1 industry. But when some people, lately I've heard people use the word balance, and I think that what they're saying is, let's put the cleanup of the Chesapeake Bay on the back burner. That's what balance means to them. And I think that's wrong. Mm-hmm. I think that we should never.
It's somebody else's problem, not ours.
And you know what, Phil? For years I've been talking to people about the cleanup of the Chesapeake Bay, because when I worked for Congressman Dyson, I helped draft the bill to begin the cleanup of the Chesapeake Bay in 1984. And Charles Mathias was the senator in the state of Maryland. He passed the companion bill. And so what a lot of people, I remember I had a conversation with a senator up in Cecil County one time, and he was saying, well, we shouldn't clean the bay up because we shouldn't have to do our part because Baltimore's not doing their part. Well, now people are saying, well, we shouldn't have to do our part because the Conowingo Dam is causing
Pennsylvania, New York.
Exactly. Yeah. So really, you just have to.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I would bring to the office of the state senate is a focus and a tenacity for getting things done. And I've thought a lot about that, because you have to think about that. Why would I be better than somebody else? And
well, tell us how a nice guy, well-educated, dedicated to his district, can get things done in the Maryland State Senate when you're from a really small, underpopulated part of the state.
Well, I think that you develop an expertise in the things that you're working on. And when you do that, people respect you, and they'll follow you, and they'll listen to you, and they might even ask you for your advice on things and say, where should we go? And that's exactly what I would do.
Yeah.
I think that that's how the great politicians that I've seen in my life have done just that. Mm-hmm. They know if they're the budget chairman, they know the budget. If they're the chairman of the environmental committee, they know the environment. Well, they better know it, and they better know it well. And if you do know it well, I think people, by and large, are going to want to know, what do you think? And also, so that's number one. But I think we have some great people in the delegation here right now. We have Norm Conway, who is probably, well, he's one of the most powerful men in the state of Maryland, and Jim Mathias. I would love to be a part of that team, because these good men are so well respected in Annapolis, and if we can work together, and I know we can, because they like me and I like them, and I'd love to be with them to help the Eastern Shore become a really beautiful place and get its fair share of the attention in the state of Maryland, in Annapolis.
Chris, in the next 4 years, what do you suppose are the big issues that are confronting the Maryland Senate and the state of Maryland?
Well, in the Maryland Senate, I think we're going to have to deal with some budget issues. How are we going to balance the budget? You know, in the state of Maryland, we have a constitutional obligation to balance the budget. And I think that we need, on that subject, I would prefer cutting spending across the board. No more taxes right now. I think we've seen enough of increases in taxes. Although, I'm not totally opposed to taxes. You know, as a small business operator, I preferred the 6 cents sales tax to another business tax. The 6 cent sales tax, in my view, spread the burden all across the board. Everybody has to chip in, and I like that approach, because everybody participates.
How about borrowing from the Highway Trust Fund and the revenue sharing with the counties, the four counties that you represent?
Well,
have been hit pretty hard.
Right. Well, you know, we went through, I think people have to remember, we went through a very difficult time as a country, not just the Eastern Shore, with the recession. It was a very dangerous time economically. I mean, it really, it boggled my mind that what do we do? It used to be, before the banks collapsed in 2008, that the way I looked at things, let's just balance the budget. You know, in Washington, let's just balance the budget, you guys. Let's quit overspending, and let's get that job done. When the banks fell apart, I thought, wow, what are we going to do now? The country was reeling over that, and I think counties and jurisdictions all across the country had to deal with the kinds of things that our governor had to deal with, and utilizing whatever revenues that he could find to fund things that he believed were necessary, he had to do. And I don't fault him for that, because the times were tough, but we need to restore those monies now that we haven't gotten out of that recession, and even, you know, some people think lawyers are raking in money. I'm a country lawyer, and I'm not, and I feel the recession just like anybody else, and so we're still struggling with this, and I don't know when we're going to get out of it.
Yeah.
It is really a tough time. And but I think that it was necessary what the governor did. I have no quarrel with that. We were dealing with very difficult circumstances, and you know, at the outset, I'm a deficit hawk, and I'm a fiscal conservative, and I really was at the outset not supportive of President Obama's stimulus package, for example, at the national level. But I'm glad smart people were in charge, because I think that was the right thing to do. Because, you know, our country was losing 700,000, 800,000 jobs a month. And then the stimulus package got passed and the tide turned. And that was significant. There was, you know, businesses weren't investing because nobody was buying. Businesses weren't producing because nobody was going to buy their products. People didn't have jobs. People were losing their homes, and they still are. And the only entity that could do anything about it was government. Government stepped in, and you know, a lot of people can quibble over how the money was spent, but I think that by and large, the fact that the money was spent was the thing that pulled us out of it. And I think if you look at the chart, it is a fact that we were losing 700, 800,000 jobs, and this was for over a period of about 6 months before Mr. Obama came into the White House. And that was happening during the prior administration. So restore those monies. Restore those monies. The counties suffered but we all suffered. You know, we can't have everything all the time.
Yeah.
You can't. And you know, I think that when times get tough, people start looking at they start trying to assess blame on all variety of things, and we need a healthy national economy to get things going again.
Sure do.
To get things going again.
Affordable. Oh, excuse me.
No, but I think, you know, when I look at tough times, I say, hey, let's invest in those things that are going to put us in a good position when things get better. And things do get better because, you know, life is just this way. There are peaks and valleys, but I think that life is, you know, civilization is always going this way. It might go this way, but education is the most important investment we can make by any measure. As a lawyer, a small business owner, I depend upon people who can come to my office and help me make my office better, help me grow, and the best way to do that is to have a well-educated citizenry. And if we want businesses to come here, we need to make sure that they know that we are committed to providing a first-class education to all the kids in our community and adults, because the community colleges play probably the most significant role of education in the Eastern Shore.
I agree.
Yeah. I was talking with President Hoy, and he told me 93% of the people who go to the community colleges stay right here, apply their skills, talents, and knowledge to businesses right here on the shore. And when you invest in community colleges, it's like putting money in the bank. I went to a community colleges up in Montgomery County, and President Hoy started out at community college up at Chesapeake. That's what he told me. So that is, you know, I think on the shore, that is to me the thing that I want to focus on very much, and that is making sure our community colleges get fully funded. Right now, I was in my discussions with President Hoy, and I've met with him a couple times. I'm lucky that he would set aside some time, and he really gives me a great lesson on what's going on. There is a formula for funding colleges, the universities and the community colleges. Community colleges are supposed to get 29 cents on the dollar. Right now they're getting 19. But I think that for the Eastern Shore, we need to fully fund our community colleges and get those kids in there. Or get, hey, people like me, if I wanted to do something else. But really, we need this educated workforce.
Yeah.
And after 13 years of making payroll, that's my conclusion. Get the kids educated.
Yeah. Maryland's role in implementing the affordable health care, is that going to continue to be an issue before the state government?
Well, I guess we'll have to see how they tidy up that debacle. I mean, and they're really, in my view, I find it really strange that things could get had got so out of control. I mean, when you consider the money that was spent, and you know, as a small business person, I find that it's unforgivable. How could you mess that up? If you have $200 million, you could find some smart people to get that job done. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. People in those, hey, in my world, you get fired. You get fired, and I hope that what they're doing now is going to fix it. But and I suspect it will, because it's a model they're working with, and I don't know why I really don't know how they screwed it up. But there's only, you know, and that is unforgivable.
Yeah.
There is that is that'll be hard for Mr. Brown.
Yeah.
To explain that one. It would be like Yogi Berra when he said when he was being asked why the Mets weren't doing well, and he had been talking for 5 minutes, and he said, if I knew the answer to that question, I wouldn't be talking about it. I still wouldn't be talking. And there's no answer to that one.
Yeah.
And
that's a tough thing for the governor's office and the lieutenant's governor's office to live down, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because he was in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that was your opportunity to shine.
Yeah.
And he should have looked at it that way.
Yeah.
I hope. Well, whatever.
When you're when you're knocking on those doors and talking to people, any other issues that you're hearing about people? What's on people's minds when it comes to talking about state government?
People are people are concerned about jobs. They know, we all know, as complicated as the world is, as complicated as the bank debacle is, and we heard that what was happening in Wall Street was we got credit default swaps and collateralized debt obligations, and it makes your mind boggle. What in the world are those things? But we go to Target and we see everything's made in China. The middle class is taking a licking. It is paying a heavy price for bad policies. And we need to make sure that we can restore the middle class, and that is getting people jobs, decent jobs that they can afford to get their kids to school, afford to buy a home, buy a decent car that will get them around. And that's, I think, by and large, that's really what people are saying.
What can state government do to encourage that kind of atmosphere?
Well, one of the things that I really will focus on if I'm elected is working on improving our cities, making our cities robust places to work and live. And there are a lot of things that people can say you need to do, but my focus is to help people like Jake Day and the City Council in Salisbury, help whatever they need to make this city great. I want to be a part of that. I've worked in Cambridge 19 years, and I want to make that city a great place to live and work. And I've watched over the last 19 years of the delegation that has represented this district, and it's been the grand old party. And I've never heard anybody say, I love Cambridge, and I want to make it a great city. And that's exactly what I want to do. And that is that kind of focus that I think people in the cities in this district are going to appreciate, because I'm going to work closely with them and make sure that they know they have a senator who is going to help them make their cities great places to live. And right now, I see, I've been traveling up and down the road to New England for 25 years, looking at little towns, and every little town is trying to find itself, is trying to get its legs, get its sea legs, and we're just like them. And some do well and some don't. And we need to do well, and I think
has a lot to do with leadership, though, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does. It has that, and we've got some great people who are stepping up, who are investing in businesses, and I really do believe that one person can make a difference.
Well,
and I'd like to be that one person.
Well, speaking of that, there's 2 minutes left, and we'd like you to pretend that's a front door,
Okay.
and you're going to go and introduce yourself and ask for the vote. So there it is. Knock, knock.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Chris Robinson. I practice law in Cambridge, Maryland. I've done that for 19 years, 13 of which have been as a small business owner, because I own my own business. And I've learned a great deal about that. I make payroll every week, year after year, and that's taught me a lot of lessons about what it means to a small business person to have people in Annapolis who care about them and who understand the issues that are important to them. My wife and I live in Trapp, which is in Talbot County. We have a beautiful golden retriever, Annabelle, who is really sweet, takes care of us, makes me happy. And I have been involved in a lot of community activities on the Eastern Shore. I worked for Congressman Roy Dyson back in the 1980s, and that's when I fell in love with the Eastern Shore. And when he lost in 1990, I came right back here. I came here to practice law, and I've been doing that for 19 years. I think that I have what it takes to be a great senator, and what that is tenacity. And I have some important goals that I'd like to achieve, and I'll pursue them with remarkable tenacity, all to help the people of the Eastern Shore. And I would be so honored if you would consider giving me that opportunity. You can vote for me on November 4th, and I'd be so grateful if you do that. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Chris. That was well said. And we're delighted to have you in to PAC 14, and we appreciate your willingness to serve your community. So thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Phil. It's good to be here and see that nice face of yours.
Well, I agree, and same here. So good luck to you, Chris.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us on this segment of One on One right here on PAC 14.